Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Drunken Tarrasque, where you're gonna pay me for my motherfucking dice to use. I'll nickel and dime you all the way, and I have Rachel with me.
Don't say that. He didn't really mean it.
Yes,
He didn't
ladies.
really mean it.
No. Today we're gonna talk about pay-to-play DMs. Um, Making a job or the idea of paying your DMs to be paying people to be your DMs. To be honest, full-heartedly, the concept, I have no problem. Goods for services. You pay, someone pays you and you entertain them. Take that whatever way you want.
That doesn't mean that there isn't like a very delicate line for people to walk when they're choosing to do this sort of thing, I think.
Yeah, essentially any DM you find, make sure they're tested, they're all clean.
All the people on pot.
Yes. Well, the reason why I'm making such a joke of this is that, and Rachel are laughing at it, is that the idea of paying a DM to be your DM, and I think we have Encounter Roleplay that essentially full time streams daily his role playing adventures or close enough to it. And it's an interesting thing, like to be this DM. And I hear everyone says, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it," or they're really like, "Well, they're just taking over a service that people want." And again, the concept and the idea is not bad, but I'm going to be practical. I'm going to be pragmatist, and I want this to actually work in the long term. And essentially, I'm poking holes at some of the major issues that comes with this. And well, first things first. You're going to do this. You're paying a DM to be your DM. You can maybe become friends, but your mindset must be removed of that he's your friend. You're paying for services. He's no longer that friendship relationship really does change when money's being
Yeah.
exchanged.
It really does, and it also changes, I think, a lot of the dynamic that really happens between DMs and players and everything like that. Because it's a lot easier, of course, to and I'm probably going a little, off where we were going to discuss, but you really end up finding yourself in a position where it's harder to figure out, engage what your players are going to find to be fun. I mean, you're going to have to go, of course, and ask them, but it's harder to gauge newer people than it is to gauge folks that you've known for a while or even been friends with, because you just what makes them laugh, what's going to be cool, what's going to
Mm-hmm.
having to make a more generic and
Yeah.
I want to say bland kind of story,
Well,
but
well,
it's harder to know.
well. That's the thing is, if the people that you are playing with are your absolute friends, that you can customize everything for them. And I think that's kind of the bigger problem when you have people coming in to pay you. This is one of the little things I have in my notes is that things have a tendency to become generic because if you don't know a person, you can't customize it towards a lot of things. And one of the other things that I think is important when you pay to play is that a lot of people, when they come to the game table, I've dealt with this a lot, and this is maybe just the small community of people I've had. I didn't want to say pricks, but people I've had was if I'm the DM, it's my job to entertain you, and I've seen that a lot with a lot of people I've played with, and I think it ultimately becomes almost a necessity mentality. It's like I'm handing you money, you're going to play for me and entertain me, and that's kind of a very toxic mindset to have just with playing role playing games. But when it comes down to this money, it's like you put as much as you get into this. If you have a great DM and you put in a little bit, you'll probably have a good time. But if you have a great DM and you put in a ton of effort and energy, you're probably going to have an excellent time. And just because the DM's great, if you don't give it your all, you're going to have a shitty game and you're going to go, hey, this is unfair. You didn't entertain me. It's like, this is a give and take relationship. It's not like, okay, lay there, just fuck me, I'll be happy. It's like you actually got to actively participate. So that money exchange, it causes a lot of tension that's going to inherently show up.
Yeah, I think it will inevitably, will yeah, inevitably show up. And I think we discussed this earlier. The situation with finding yourself just kind of like boxed in that way that you're talking about. But difficult in normal situations during gameplay, like what kind of items are they going to get? Like, let's say, you know, they're in part of a dungeon situation and there's a box full of stuff. I mean, and then someone feeling like they haven't received an item or anything, or there hasn't been enough treasure for them.
Yeah.
But you're you know, you're secretly waiting to give them something amazing.
Mm-hmm. Party loot. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I've dealt with the party loot syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're gonna want to give them something later on, and you're like, but here's the thing, it doesn't really, it's sort of meaningless if it doesn't mean something, if it doesn't feel like they earned it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to like sit there between wondering, oh, should I just, you know, wait to give them stuff for a little while until they've overcome some more stuff, or, you know, do I give them things scattered throughout? It's there's just a lot of different little things. I think a lot of it could be handled like what some people are discussing on Twitter and social media and saying what they do with a contract and everything like that. But you can only do so much, because I think we remember we discussed in our episode about Session Zero and how it's sort of a social contract that takes place and everything like that, where you explain things like, you know, how far can you go, like what is going to upset somebody in a game and things like that. It's difficult to really know, because like, what are you going to do? Are you going to have like a very extended interview between you and each player?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might be a good idea, but it's a lot of extra work to go through. I think if you're managing more than one game per week, and then you have to make a little bit of room in your schedule to give an extensive interview to each player, there's just not going to be enough time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the other thing I was going to lead into. Thank you. By the simple fact of being a paid DM, people give me money, it actually puts more work on the DM, and it's going to make a mandatory requirement for excessive note taking and a lot of effort and extra energy put into it. And again, that is something that many of the people, when they ask to have a DM, they don't think of the level of work that comes with it. I even showed Rachel the level of note taking I've taken for a few games I've had, and Rachel was like, holy shit, that's a ton of notes. It's like every session was almost like 2-3 pages of notes.
But then let's be honest, you do take DMing very seriously. I mean, you treat it sort of a bit like a school project. Like, you really do. No, your level of commitment is really big. So yeah, if you were doing a game like you like to do, yes, it would be very, very involved. But if they are the type that are they're more open to doing freeform stuff, and they're just kind of gonna like do the lazy DM kind of thing through it. I mean, I suppose you could make it work, but I think you'd have to have a great poker face, and you'd have to have a great...
Well, what Rachel doesn't realize that there was a ton of ad-libbing that I was doing, but it's like I had to take excessive notes to make sure I didn't make a mistake, that I let things continue on, and, oh, this was a great action they did, can I expand on that? And that's kind of what I mean by excessive note-taking. And one of the other things I think is really important is, when you come down to this, some of the things that the DM does, some players might not like, and they might just immediately just have a negative reaction to. Case in point, I had a person who wouldn't give me a background for their character, which is essentially one of my little requirements. And she goes, I don't care, do whatever you want, do your worst. And this character was a flamboyant traveling person from different realms who would whore around, was a rich person who just slummed it around with prostitutes, drunk, and debauchery all over the place. Well, you say to me, go all out, I don't care, do your worst. A moment in a scene with a possible illegitimate children. The player...
Oh god, that one was beautiful, actually.
Well, here's the funny
that
part.
Moment.
Everyone loved it, but that person.
Yeah, everybody else loved it. They got a little bit upset about it, and everybody else thought it was hilarious. And it was because, okay, so you've told us that your character gets drunk, and they don't necessarily remember who they've all slept with, and so suddenly there's this woman who looks just god awful, and she shows up with just a bunch of like little children.
Anyone who knows Mark, Rick and Morty, Squanchy? Yes, ladies and gentlemen,
to
I
explain the person, like the player was playing a person who was cat folk, who was like a basically a
Tabaxi.
cat person.
Yeah.
And so we nicknamed the ugly woman who apparently showed up with all the kids Squanchy because
I rolled. What is she beautiful? Roll a d100, and the person's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna nail it out of the park." Yeah, there's go. Oh no, that's not Squanchy, but
oh,
but
that's my cat.
but ultimately, this was something she got really mad. She got frustrated, shut down, and refused to play. Now, here's the thing: as me as a DM, this is the other reason why the dangers of having pay to play. An asshole DM would make it mandatory. This is your child. You got to do with it. And she just wanted to give up and write a new character. She didn't want to deal with an issue or a problem in the game. For me, Rachel can attest, and everyone can attest. I let the people roll. People were rolling insight, rolling perception, going, wait a second, there's no genetic links, there's no color codes that seem familiar, all these kids don't match an age range, they seem too young or too old. Like, this whole line of reasoning,
Yeah,
and then having an
it was
investigation.
basically a bullshit test. We didn't actually well, he didn't actually have what do you call it? He didn't actually have them father illegitimate children. It was just somebody there who was looking for a handout from a rich person.
Exactly, and this is again why I consider it very important. Rachel knows I don't screw over a player. I can give you a situation. If you don't like it, if you roleplay well enough or roleplay or do something around it to work around it, I'm not going to force you to, oh, here's your illegitimate children, you got to take it. If you really don't like that thing, I'll let you. You have to fight a way to get right away from it, but you have to think, like, okay, I didn't have this. And a bad DM, like the one I dealt with, I said I was a vampire hunter. I magically got bitten and turned into a vampire, but I don't understand why or how I turned into a vampire, but I'm a vampire hunter. And this is why I have that distinct difference. If I give you something and you're like, "Hey, Mike, I don't like it," like, okay, work your way around it to get out of it. Make it a challenge, to overcome. And this is another thing that I think comes down with the problem is that with that pay to play issue, players think the DM is going to always be their friend, is going to have NPCs that are not going to lie to them, or at least maybe the people I've played with. Not all of them, but just enough of them that make me kind of question this. And it's like, I think this is an issue to realize that some of the characters that the DM puts in there are not going to be your friends. And it's not going to be sunshine and lollipops. You're going to have some challenges to overcome. And some players will probably go, no, that's too much of a challenge for me. I just want to munchkin my way through. And it's like, dude, like, you got to understand, like, this is how I roleplay. You may have liked how I set it up or liked the live streams, but I have a specific way. This is why you like it. And they might like watching it over playing it, and that's kind of another little issue. But also one of the other things is
But
that
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking money for doing this stuff. It's more, what are you willing to put up with to do this and everything like that. I mean, what are you willing to go through to to make this profitable? I mean, looking at it, unless you're like one of these really, unless you're one of the big shots, I think this should only be side income, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I think the nature of it is not necessarily stable, because you don't know. I mean, a couple people could just decide one day that things in their life have gotten a little too busy and they can't show up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you've lost players, and maybe you can find new ones, but I mean, unless you're a big shot, it's going to be harder to find new players.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's another issue. If you're doing this as a business, or at least paying for or getting money for it, DM burnout is another one of the issues that I think most people don't realize. Like, it naturally happens over playing a game, but DM burnout, like, you can't burn out. You literally are forced to fight through a bad day. You would literally have to go through, because Rachel knows, like, if it's a bad day, I'm gonna call it today, guys. I can't do it. I'm frustrated, or I'm stressed out, or I'm overheating. Like, I can't do it. And most people are like, okay, I understand, but like, you're paying for this. Like, most people are like, oh yeah, sure, sure, sure. But you got to realize, like, hey, I'm paying you X amount of dollars to entertain me on Sundays from 9 to 5. I'm saying 9 to 5 because that's the only number that came into my head right away. But it's like, I'm paying you to entertain me, dude. You got to keep up your end of the bargain. And again, you're turning it into a business, and you got to realize a business mindset will come in. And when you start doing this, you do have to do your part of the job, regardless of health wise. Like, this is not just something to be, oh, I can just flutter around nice and fun. Like, you got to put your nose to the grindstone, which literally means you're going to treat it a completely different. In that different mindset, it will start affecting a lot of little things. And let's say you even have a slightly bigger community. Please, you're going to have to start realizing you're going to have to please a larger amount of people and more people. Well, to be able to properly pull that off, that literally means you're not going to be able to do longer campaigns. You're going to be looking at mini campaigns or one shots as your primary thing. And that kind of, again, cuts down the ability to really make a large, enriching world. Those take time. You got to pay for that. You're going to have some problems.
Yeah, also it does seem that making a smaller game, like making smaller one-offs, would probably be the most advantageous thing to have as a side thing to your regular job, because you're working your regular job, you come home, you're exhausted and everything like that, and it's then you have to figure out all the stuff that you're gonna have to do. But yeah.
Well, one of the biggest things, I don't remember if I said this or not, but not all playstyles are compatible. And I
Yeah, that
think
was also another thing to mention, yes.
and I think this is one of the things that a lot of people, they like to say all playstyles are compatible. And I'm going to tell you something straight up from my experiences of just doing it for fun and just shitting around. No, it is not. It is something that people want to like to believe, but I can tell you from experience, not all playstyles are compatible. Any DM that says, oh, yes, it is, either has not really had that many different playstyles together or are lying through their ass, because if you're dealing with a bunch of role players and then you have a guy who is basically a mad scientist, aka I'm going to break the world, I'm going to play the Joker in a game that the Joker doesn't allow. Like, if you're paying a person to play in a game and these people are paying to role play, like, it ultimately means these things are going to come to a head, and you can't make everyone happy. It's a fact of life. You can't make every playstyle happy. Not You can't make everyone happy all the time. It's like, you got to realize, like, hey, my segment's for pure role playing. And yes, you're gonna say, oh, just put that in your social contract. I'm gonna tell you something. The longer you play, you start noticing people have certain play styles, and some play styles are just gonna conflict. Like, if you want to make the Joker in a Dark Heresy campaign, or you want to have a magic user in a Dark Heresy campaign, you start playing around with magic. It's like you're going to implode things inevitably, because you're ultimately ignoring the basic rules. And that's another important thing, is that you gotta realize, if you play in anyone's game, you have to, as a player, this is another thing, it's like a basic requirement, you gotta understand the rules in the universe that's set up from the DM or the universe. If you don't respect that, you're ultimately saying, hey, I'm not fulfilling my part of the basic bargain of being a player and paying for it. You need to be having more requirements on the player than just the DM now with
I mean,
money.
I think it would depend on what you're going to put in your contract or whatever. I mean, I think the best thing to do would be, I mean, if you were going to try and make that work and everything, would be to say that here are the things that you need them to do. And if they choose not to do those things, you can refuse them to be at your table for whatever reason. I think I think if that helps the situation, but they probably would behave a little bit better. But I think you have to assert yourself in that way from the beginning. You have to let them know what kind of DM you are and what is allowed and what is not allowed at your table.
Mm-hmm. And that ultimately becomes super important. And again, to appeal to a large community, to get any people, you're going to inevitably start slowly becoming generic. What makes a lot of these small games really good, really fun, really enjoyable is the ability to customize, the ability to make it tailored for players. And if you got to do this a lot or make many games or do a lot of games, you're going to become very generic. You're going to become so bland. You're going to start becoming bland because you're going to make shortcuts. It's just an inevitable thing with DMs or just human nature. And what makes the game so fun is that I can look at Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat and go, I think these parts here, here, and here are pieces of crap. I'm going to insert my own thing to make them make sense or more enjoyable. And Rachel can even say, oh my god, what the hell, I completely rewrote Horde of the Dragon Queen. And essentially gave him
really
3 adventures.
You basically... It's like you performed surgery, basically. Let's be honest. You performed surgery on that campaign.
Yeah, well, again, that's kind of what makes pay-to-play another difficulty, is that a great DM, because a lot of people are paying and they want that great DM, the DM that puts that effort and energy into it, they're going to learn where to pull from, because Rachel has seen not just my notes, but the books I pull from, and you've even laughed at the level of things I pulled from C.S. Lewis, Screw Tape Letters, Native American Myths and Legends, other...
Yeah, you read a lot in addition to this stuff. Yeah, you'll... Mike likes to pull a bunch of books and things together just for ideas and stuff like that, and that's what he tends to use as a lot of reference, and he'll be talking about this stuff a lot, and I'll be talking about it. I'll be talking back. And it's actually pretty great. But like me, when I was trying to do my campaign, I was like, I want this to be very Cthulhu-ish. Also, I want this to be very traditional dungeon. This is just to be, that traditional feel, like very deadly situation. Yeah, very deadly situation. And I hope you don't die, because I want you to get to the other death traps I've placed here.
You can guess who's the sociopath in the group.
What? I am not a sociopath. I just think that dangerous situations help to build tension, and help people be able to work together. But if they don't work together, they're all going to die. That's the situation.
And again, just from our talkings, you can notice the difference in styles, and I think that's another important thing, is that people, when they pay to play, they'll have this idealized style in their mind, and you got to get rid of that idealized style. Again, it's a good thing is that the more DMs that do this, you'll be able to shop around, and the only downside is that I see more of a drive for D&D, not Dark Heresy, not L5R, not Mouse Guard, not any of these other things. I'm seeing a very much, give me D&D all the time, every time, and it's like, I sit there like, please let me play something else. I need something else other than D20s.
Mike, what are you on right now? Did you have coffee?
No, I did not, but ladies and gentlemen, Rachel's laughing because she already knows the level of, like, I do every...
You're getting a little bit No, but I do know that you want to play something else, definitely. And also, when you end up in this DM situation, it also becomes a situation that you never get to play. I mean, when are you really going to get to play with your friends? I mean, if this is sort of a ritual for you and your friends, and you start DMing, I'm not saying this is like cheating on your friends, but I'm saying it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult for you to then have time to spend with your friends that you've built these relationships with. I think it's
it actually is, and that's kind of one of the other important parts for a person who does, if they ever do this, like, you do want to be a player in your own game sometimes, and it is a nice recharge to plug in a player in someone else's game.
That actually might be the best thing to do. The best thing to do might be that you don't DM a game for your friends, that you just play with your friends. Just play the game. You're a player in that game. You have to be a player in that game. Then you DM 2 other games.
Yeah, well, that's Rachel can attest to that. The level of games I've run, it's like it's nice
Yeah,
to
and
be a
I know
player.
you definitely want to. Yeah, I know you definitely want to play. Like, it's been forever since you've been able to.
It's not the fact that I've built like a dozen characters, made a backstory, told you about them, and made you go, "Oh God, that looks like a fun character to play." It's like, yes, it is. Give me a time to play. Stitch involved in me coming
Mike,
out.
oh God, Mike, you're going full Stitch. This is just.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'll go first Stitch and kill are you? I am Godzilla! And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, please enjoy. Don't worry about pay to play, but if you do it, there's a lot more thoughts and problems that could come
Yeah,
up.
if you do it, just protect yourself. Get a contract.
Make sure they're
Definitely
clean.
set. Definitely session 0, and also, I think showering should be one of the requirements. Just in general, like, like, come on,
Yes.
everybody's got to be around you. Just
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you another time, and happy gaming.
good night.